We have a seat waiting for you in the Delmarva Life audience. Come be part of the fun. To book your seat, just visit delmarvalife.com and click on the show tab or call 443-880-9116.
Well, earlier in the show, we introduced you to a World War II veteran who served overseas. During the war, many of the battles were fought in Europe and the Pacific.
The mainland United States never became a significant site for battle, but we were ready, especially here on Delmarva. Fort Miles in Sussex County was designed to defend assets along the Delaware River and Bay, as well as the city of Philadelphia. In fact, it was one of the largest and most heavily armed coastal fortifications ever built. And although Fort Miles never saw any military action, it stood prepared.
When you drive on Route 1 along the Delaware coast, it's hard to miss these concrete towers. There's 11 of them up and down the coast, and although they may seem pretty random, they played a huge role in protecting Delmarva and the mouth of the Delaware Bay during World War II.
Construction started even before the United States was involved in World War II, mainly because the United States realized there was going to be a threat, and the Port of Philadelphia was very important. DuPont foundries were making black powder, as well as nylon was being produced by DuPont.
Sean Heacock is the historic site manager at Fort Miles in Sussex County, which was home to the 261st Coast Artillery.
By the end of about 1943, 1944, there were 23 major caliber weapons here, 12-inch, 16-inch, 6-inch, large guns, ready to protect the Delaware Bay, as well as the entire minefield that was out in the bay to protect everything.
The fire control towers were set up as baselines to triangulate the position of suspicious ships or U-boats.
They are what aimed these guns, more or less.
When an enemy ship was detected, information about the ship's position was phoned from the towers to the plotting room.
This is where the brains would do the work, the brains of Fort Miles. So this would be in the plotting room. Basically, you have one arm representing one tower, and they see a ship at 255 degrees. And you have another arm representing another tower. They see the ship at 310 degrees.
Creating a triangle to which the guns would aim.
That ship, in about 30 seconds, will be at this point at this range.
Fortunately, few ships came close to the Delaware coastline, but Fort Miles was ready.
For the most part, they did a lot of practicing here. They lived all throughout this entire Cape Henlopen State Park. There are barrack buildings strategically placed, so the men would be on roughly 2 to 3 minute readiness, so that if something happened, they could be at their gun batteries within 2 to 3 minutes.
There was some underwater traffic.
They did have the submarine threat, the U-boat threat, but that was, the minefields were the big defender against that. These guns aren't designed to shoot against an underwater targets.
At its peak, these barracks housed more than 2,000 soldiers, but eventually the threat from Germany diminished.
This base ended up being very calm. The German Navy, the Tirpitz and the Bismarck, the two big German battleships, by about 1942 were out of commission. So what this base was built to defend against wasn't coming. So it was just practice at that point, just in case something else did show up.
The Army and the Navy continued to use Fort Miles for various purposes. The Navy used a portion of the base for Cold War spying.
The Army and the Navy did not fully give up rights to this site until about 1996, but mid-50s, they started converting it over to a recreational post. So people from Fort Meade or soldiers from Fort Meade, could come over and stay in the barrack buildings here and go on a nice vacation.
And in 2004, it was officially put on the National Historic Registry. Today, efforts are being made to turn Fort Miles into a museum. The original gun that sat in this building is long gone, but replacements are being found around the country. And recently, a 16-inch gun barrel from the USS Missouri made its way to Delmarva.
Fort Miles Historic Association raised about $140,000 to move that 16-inch gun barrel from the USS Missouri, and it started off on a barge. Then it was placed on a rail car, which brought it all the way in through Lewis and out to the Barcroft plant right out here. Then loaded onto a 96-wheel trailer at crawled it into the park and finally unloaded. That gun barrel weighs a little more than 200 tons. So the transportation costs and the permitting and the infrastructure to carry that much weight is a challenge to work around.
In fact, Sean thinks it's the exact barrel that General Douglas MacArthur stood under during the signing of the Japanese surrender. Sean says a lot of people hear the stories of battles in Europe, and now it's time to tell the stories of what happened on the home front.
This building is in the process of being converted into a museum. So, and the long-term goal is to renovate this building to the point that we can house exhibits and house all of the information telling the story of Fort Miles, telling the World War II story, clear through. So, in the future, hopefully this building will be set up that way, and school children will be able to come in here and learn about science and math through the lens of history, and really help make this place a little bit more known.
A story that answers the question, what if?
Now, one German U-boat did surrender and was taken to Fort Miles. In May of 1945, the U-858 was escorted to Fort Miles. 57 sailors were sent to Fort DuPont near Wilmington. They were set free a couple of years later. Many of the German soldiers decided to stay in the United States.
Interesting story, Lisa.
Yeah,
You learned a lot.
I learned a lot too.
Well, still ahead on Delmarva Life, we have your chance to become $250 richer by 5 o'clock.
Plus, call it a rock fest with the CSI team. Ozzy Osbourne and his Black Sabbath bandmates make a rare appearance on tonight's CSI season finale. We get a sneak peek next.
But first, you may go through a lot of fruit this time of year. Rachel Ray has a handy how-to tip on how you can recycle your citrus peels.
I don't know about you guys, but in our family in the summertime, we go through a lot of citrus. My husband loves margaritas, so we use a lot of limes. I love lemonade, so we juice a lot of lemons. And of course, whenever we have house guests, a little fresh orange juice in the morning. Save all of these halves of the citrus, hollowed out, put them in the freezer, and they make beautiful serving dishes the next time you're serving up sorbet. You garnish it with a little fresh mint. How cute is that? Same thing when you're thinking fruit salad. Use the pineapple itself as the service bowl.